Today, I want to do a summary on where we stand on short messages as of approximately middle of 2025. Let's talk about some of the major problems that I'm seeing so that everyone can be aware of them and think about them in your day-to-day workflow. So that's what we're talking about today. Usually when you're dealing with short messages, you have a lot of them. And often people try to figure out, well, what is relevant? What data do we need? What do we need to promote for review? And one of the criteria they use to figure that out is a channel name. And one thing that I found in my experience is people do not stay on topic. So if you have different channels categorized under, talking about pets, talking about projects, talking about internal projects, external projects, even though you have channels that are specifically designed for a purpose and people know what that purpose is, they will not be discussing exactly that thing in that channel. You will have sort of a cross communication. You may have a person kind of starting to talk about something else and they say, oh yeah, wait, let me continue in this other channel. So important thing to remember is that your data is not organized by channel because of just how users are using the data and they're not always following what they're supposed to. Because of that, you may want to be more broad than you initially think you should have been. Another important thing that I learned is that participants of a channel are rarely tracked correctly. So you're usually going to have two fields. You have a from name and you're going to have channel participants. So when you have a from that's associated to a specific message, that field is probably going to be correct. It's going to specify who is the person who sent the message. The problem comes in is when you're trying to figure out who were participants of a channel who also have seen that message. Now, I don't know if it's relevant to the case or not to know who other participants were because they can make an excuse, well, they weren't monitoring the channel or something else. But oftentimes people say, I want to know who are the recipients of the message, who are the people who could have potentially read that message. And that information is often incorrect. Let's take, for example, Slack. The participant information for Slack is of the time of the collection. So when data is being acquired, there is a field that contains name of all the people who were members of the channel when data is being collected. It doesn't reflect the history. There is a message saying a user joined the channel, but you may not have that message because it was excluded for some reason or because it falls outside the date range. So with the Slack, you're going to get all the channel participants when data was collected, not necessarily when that message was sent. In Telegram, you have kind of the opposite problem. The channel members get added to participants list as people being added. But if you take data from a middle of communication, you may wind up with a situation where people are not on the list even though there should be. Again, it's kind of weird how some of the systems work. The point is, you may not get accurate participant information in your channels. One more thing that I just remembered is Slack has, I guess they call guest users. So these are the users who could either join from the other company or somehow participate in the conversation without being an official participant. So they will not be listed in user list of a channel, but they will be in the actual messages. So again, this makes things really weird and it is very difficult to figure out the actual participants of specific communication at specific point in time. Another interesting consideration is how people identify themselves. So let's say you have a large collection, you have multiple phones, different devices, you have all the data kind of dumped into one place, and you're looking for messages from a particular person, right? And if you're going to go to that collection of data, you may not be able to find all the messages because a person can identify themselves in the iMessage differently than in WhatsApp, for example. So I had a situation where a person was identifying himself as Big Boss because he was using that chat, the application WhatsApp, for his work, for the company that he owned. So he was Big Boss, that's how he identified himself, and that's how everyone was communicating with him. But when we were looking at his iMessage, he was using his normal, regular name. So if we had all the messages in one collection, we had to know how that person identifies themselves in order to find all the messages. And so same way, you may have same issues. So it's important to know different aliases people use in different applications. Another interesting problem I noticed is that path to attachments is surprisingly difficult to get right. Not sure what the problem is. You would think like you generate a path in a variable in your application, like for the path where you're going to save a file to, then you take that path and you say write to file, you save that, you keep the path in your JSON, and done. Everything matches. But for some reason, it is really difficult for many companies to get it right. So for example, Google, when you have attachments with the same name, what they do is they add 1, 2, 3 to the end of the file name when they save it to a disk, but they don't do that when putting information into the JSON. And because of that, you don't know which duplicate message goes with which. You really have no idea. Similar problem with iMazing. Instead of just using field to specify what the file name is, they have like a system that the attachment name is going to be certain number of characters of the conversation name plus date of the message formatted to a specific way plus the file name. And so they have all this complicated system that I had to reverse engineer, and even that isn't 100%. So for whatever reason, a lot of companies just can't write path of a file to a field so that we could use it. And because of that, when we read in that data in, you may not get perfect association to your attachments, and you might be missing attachments, or if your program doesn't account for that, you might actually be pointing to the wrong file. So that is kind of a major problem in my opinion. Now the last problem I see is not actually technical problem or the problem with messages itself, but it's actually the users of the data, the reviewers, the technical people who handle short messages. And what I'm seeing is people don't want to learn. And when we were doing e-discovery, we all kind of went through this learning curve. We figured out what is this, what is that, how it works. We came up with best procedures, and it was a painful process for all of us as a community. And now we kind of starting to do that again with short messages. We have different best practices. We have different ways of handling them. We kind of starting e-discovery from scratch in a way, because we're figuring all this stuff out. And I see a lot of attitude from people like, this is annoyance, I don't want to deal with this. I just need a button that's going to handle this for me, right? And there's no such thing. This is a whole new area of e-discovery with its own problems and its own solutions. And there's going to be no button that's going to solve it for you. Different data types are going to present different problems. There are going to be problems with names, with data, with attachments. There'll be problems with everything. And you have to treat it as your primary data source, not your secondary annoying data source. You really have to take your time and learn these different data types, learn the tools that handle them, what are the best practices for the specific data types, and how to use different tools, how to use them effectively. Without this, you're just going to be stuck being frustrated and being angry at your tech person because they didn't handle something right, they didn't do something right. So take your time and learn. This is the new data type. It's not new anymore, but it is not going anywhere. And there's going to be more and more of it. So learn to use it. So that would be my list of important consideration for short messages. Do you have anything to add? Put it in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow on LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube, and I will see you on another video. This is a really dangerous place I'm walking in, so I'm sorry. I have to keep looking down. This is just injury waiting to happen. See you on another video.